Everybody knows who I am. He's been Tetris forever. Moved to Nutanix a couple of years ago. It'll be 2 years in 5 years, in fact. So, I know we're not allowed to do live demos, but we're going to do one anyway, because that's how people get the goals. So that was my first idea, right? PowerPoint, and then we did a PowerPoint one a couple of years ago, just introducing Nutanix to the wild, and it was a bit boring. So I thought, well, let's see if we can take you through the whole thing, give you an idea of what 40 minutes in the life of an admin is, or the common tasks that you're going to do. Doing live demos and being sort of a bit of a hero, it does work, right? It's been proven time after time. You know, anybody who's seen Smokey and the Bandit, he goes away with Sally Field for a reason, right? Delivering beer, avoiding cops, that's how you do a demo to impress, right?
Oh my God.
Drive an 8-bit Ferrari through, right? You don't even have to start driving, because look, already convinced. Definitely good. However, Heroism can have its drawbacks, and it can go a little bit awry once in a while. Which is okay as well, but you know, despite all the wonders that you get, you can end up making a bit of a fool of yourself in front of your friends. So that may be where we move off at a tangent today. Depends, okay? We'll try our best. So who hasn't heard of Nutanix? So everybody knows what we do, right? We take all of this crap that we've all been sick of using and administrating for the last 2 decades, and we consolidate that into an appliance, right? We bring the storage, the compute, the virtualization together, and then we scale it out as and when the customer needs. Start as small as you want, grow to whatever size you want to be at your own pace. Part of the reason why people like cloud economics and things like that. The next thing we did was obviously to concentrate on the applications. Does anybody think they should be spending time down here, or even here? No. Everybody is an expert in delivering applications, desktops, services, and things like that. So the next thing that we did this nearly a couple of years ago now, is to actually consolidate the virtualization layer into that stack as well. And that was with our own Acropolis hypervisor, which we had 2 years before that, actually, as normal KVM. Anybody manage KVM here? No, exactly, it was shit, wasn't it? That's why we did it. So we wanted to have a distributed management layer above KVM, really concentrate on these things. This is irrelevant to most people. This is where the good stuff is, this is where the value is. And the quicker we can get somebody up to this value here, i.e. you guys, your customers, the better it's going to be. In terms of customers, we've got them all over the world in different verticals. You know, there's everybody from Coca-Cola, Subaru, Starbucks, Ferrari, Williams, the FBI. We did one deal last year, which was a starter of 46,000 desktops with Horizon, with the FBI. That's going to scale to around about 136,000 over the next 3 years. So, you know, they're starting fairly big, right, admittedly. There's no reason why you can't just start with a small amount. So this is one example, not the FBI, obviously, because obviously they would have been killed had they been taking photos in here. This is one example of a retail customer that started here. They started with 6 nodes, or 6 blocks as it was, they got 4 nodes in. And they scaled it up and scaled it up and scaled it up over the course of 2 years. One customer who did this earlier this year started with 240 nodes, a whole bunch of stuff, loads of tier 1 workloads, bit of Oracle, bit of SQL, and of course the tier 1 workload we all like, which is VDI. And they nearly tripled the size of that. And who can tell me how long it took them to do that? From 1 week? Weekend. Because all they were doing was racking it, plugging it in, getting the switching sorted out, and you're done. Then it scales out. And this was on ESX, right? So obviously this is logically broken up into failure domains of either a rack or, you know, a 32-node cluster, being that it's on ESX. For our cluster, we don't really care. So it's kind of cool that way. If anybody cares about Gartner, they think the world of us. Everybody apart from actually Huawei moved to the left in this one, going from 2014 to 2015. And it's more of an idea of the market and the idea of people and how they want to consume the infrastructure and how that's changed. There'll be a new one, probably a hyper-converged one, coming out soon as well. So, pretty cool. This is the interesting stuff for me, and obviously for you guys as well, is that the integration with Citrix and the partnership with Citrix is growing exponentially. So if anybody was at Kickoff or Synergy, you'll know some of the announcements we made jointly, and that's really helping me as an ex-Citrix guy as well. First of all, I knew I made the right decision to do something as a partner as well, but also the stack is what our customers want. Our joint customers and guys like you actually implement this stuff. GA 3 days ago was the MCS integration with the Propolis as well. So I'm not going to go into MCS and PBS because we'll be here forever, but hands up for MCS. If you use it, deploy it. Hands up for PBS. Hands up at Norton Ghost. Okay. So anybody familiar with Citrix terminology will understand all of this. This is the design methodology that CCS use. And really is the idea of start at the user layer, drop your way down and simplify each and every stack. It's probably similar to what you guys do and what I did in the previous role as well. The idea for this though is that you all understand this. You shouldn't care about this. Pick the hypervisor you want, so we support our own hypervisor, obviously Hyper-V and obviously VMware. But what we want to do, and this is some of the stuff that we're doing with Citrix in terms of the joint proposition, partnership, and the support, is that you can do the whole thing with two companies. And this simplifies the deployment, simplifies the delivery, it makes my life easier, and it makes your life easier as well. Because what you really want to get to is that. Make it invisible, right? It should be set and forget and scale it and add it as you need. It shouldn't be the management complexity under here that you've had to probably worry about and move through before. The value is up here because the value is the user and the applications. It's not the infrastructure. That should be like electricity, right? Nobody goes into a data center and brags about the generator they've got coming in there or the phase, for example. You know, that's a commodity item. The infrastructure should be a commodity as well, and it should be set and forget and reliable. All right, so demo. So I'm going to take you through a global cluster, or I should say a group of clusters we've got across Europe. We're going to manage and see all of those in one place, and then we're going to zero into it, and then we'll move into hardware, storage, VMs, show you everything from a single pane of glass, all this stuff that even when I was at Citrix we were talking about doing. And then I'll show you the MCS integration, which is frightfully dull because it's exactly the same as we've always done it. There's no difference whatsoever. It's just a binary that we put into the broker, and away you go. But I'll show you that as well. And we should have some pretty graphs, but Jim's not here, so bad luck. But if it dies, we'll use video. Because this is all going, admittedly wired, make you good. But it is over 4G, so we will try our best. So don't anybody use 4G here, for God's sake. Right, so the clusters we have are striped all the way across Europe. Anybody from dirty porn territory? Commies, Socialists, Royalty, St. Patrick's, it's all very good. I like this one as well. Crisis, to quite honest. But the Ocean of Europe always makes me tickle as well. So we've got a number of clusters. These are all dotted around in various SE labs, all knitted together. And I'm going to admin all of them in one go. So that panacea of having that wider view of the world, get all the information and then make decisions based on it, that's what we're going to go through. This is the one we're going to really concentrate on though, because that's where the Zen desktop stuff is. So that's the part that will show you the integration and how that all hangs together. All right? Right, across everything. So why don't we say this is our lab system I'll show you. Let's go to the prism over here. So what you see here, you see that okay? You see the graphs? We've got a bunch of clusters and we're reporting back information on them. This isn't where you sort of make admin decisions or start doing some more interesting things. This is more the thing that you sort of hang on a wall and it gives you the ideas of what's going on, who's been naughty or nice, that sort of thing. So what we'll do to start with, I've got the VM I need to So we've got a VM here. So this is the Explorer. So our devs wrote a search engine effectively to operate within all of the clusters. So what I've typed up here has brought back some results. And this is really now what we call the entity browser. So we found a VM, and what I'm going to do, this has just got iometer behind it. So I'm going to make some places of these, stand them all up, just to generate some pretty graphs while we're doing all the other stuff. But you can see here, we can now start to look at this VM, and we can also do some quick actions for it as well. Clone it, delete it, launch the console, all that kind of stuff. So let's just power it on. And we'll actually click on that, and we can go and see what that VM is doing. So you can see here when I was testing it a while ago, that we've got some statistical information coming back. And this will start to populate once that's powered up and actually into Windows. So we can launch the console and actually see that this is not lies, it's actually running up and down, and then we'll start the iometer scripts that we're going to run as well. Now if I want to do something a bit more interesting, we can make some clones of this. So give me a number between 9 and 11.
Maybe 10.
Good. So we'll make a clone of all of those. Now, this VM here, I'll actually show you. We've actually got 200 gig disk and a bunch of 10 gig ones here as well. That's its main OS, and this is the ones where we strike the iometer loads over it as well. And we can see exactly what's going on here. So all of those clones should be finished now. So if I wind it back here, so there you go. All of those instantly created. What I can do now, I'll show you something in the Explore tab, which is pretty clever. So this is where you can gather, this is the entity browser. An entity to us is the cluster, VM, hosts, storage, parts of the stuff that hang it all together, right? So let's put a filter on. And let's go find all the VMs for IO test. And I'll select all of those, and now we've got actions based off those VMs. So we'll power them on. Nice and simple. And they're all going to come up and they should generate loads of IO, and Jim will come in and go, where's my IOPS? As he always does. So nice and simple and straightforward. And what I can do as well, you can say, well, now I want to focus on performance. And let's have a look at their power state. And we'll start grouping them into fancy little colors like this. So over time, you could use this as a margin or as a view to actually look at your entire estate. But instead of looking at graphs or ones and zeros or actual data, you could have a nice visual representation of the state of play. And if you wanted to, we could start to move things around for, let's have a look at CPU count, for example. These are all the same, so it's a terrible demo. But we can start looking at tile view, we start looking at the world in slightly different ways. Really simple and straightforward. So, there we go. So we're generating some information here as well. And if we look back on the main page, we go back here, we find here cluster number 4, we'll start to see a little bit of extra load being generated on this as well. You can see I was playing around earlier just to be doubly sure this was going to work, right? Don't want you back and shouting at me. So after we've seen all this, what we can do now you say, well, look, this cluster here, I want to see exactly what's going on this, right? I don't want to look at the whole view anymore. I want to look at my Acropolis cluster, number 4, wherever it was. I think this is the one actually in Amsterdam. So we can now click on, we'll show you before. It's something we developed a while ago called Runway. We actually showed this at our customer conference 12 months ago. So Runway is really the predictive tool to say, well, what's going to happen in 50 days time, 90 days time, when am I going to need to do something, when am I running out of memory, storage, CPU, that kind of stuff, right? So I'll show you the memory one because the graph is bigger, so it makes more sense. What it's basically going to show you is, over time, you can see this graph here, gradually growing there because we're looking at the median values for what we've seen over time. This means that if, for example, you create 1,000 VMs, full provision them, and you're claiming loads of storage back, we can say, well, look, in 10 days' time, if you keep doing this or you don't action something, you are going to run out of space. So we can then go back and say, well, you haven't recovered these snapshots in 2 years. Why are they there? If you delete all these, you can reclaim some space. Or you need to buy a storage-heavy node and add that to the cluster to open all of that capacity tier open. But if we're looking at things like CPU, so that's actually looked at the stuff that we've been doing today where I've been firing machines up. We can look at the recommendations, and this will show me all of the VMs that have really been sat there doing nothing, but taking up space, power, cooling, and time and effort. So do we want to start removing those? Do we need to do some actions against them? Do we need to actually shrink the VM sizes so we're actually making a more efficient work of the workload that they're doing, assuming they weren't just sat there doing nothing like those ones were. So let's go and have a look at the individual cluster itself. So instead of looking at the wider world and looking at all 9 of those clusters, we're now looking at just one. So anybody who's familiar with mechanics before, this is what you would be used to. This is called Prism Element. So we've gone from Prism Central, which is all of those clusters across Europe, talking to one central point, to looking at an individual cluster because you want to do some particular management on it, or you want to gain more information back on the stuff that's being pulled up into Prism Central. Okay? So you can see here, what are we doing? 35,000 IOPS and over 3 nodes. So these have got 3 x86 servers in them, 20 core, I believe they are. So 2 10-core Intel processors, Haswell processors, 256 gig of RAM. This is on 2 SSDs, and about 2 800 gig SSDs. Nothing particularly big, nothing particularly fancy. But we're doing pretty well. And in terms of latency, if you care for those things, as it's doing now, it's, there you go, 007 milliseconds, which is pretty good. And even when we've gone quite high, what was that one? 11 when I did something now. As an average, it's looking pretty good. So let's go to the bottom and we'll work our way back up. So let's go to hardware. So does anybody really care about hardware here while it works and while it's powered on, should say? Everybody familiar with x86 servers? You just want it to work. It's an enabler, right? Who was in Sean's session yesterday? Sean Bass's session, right? IT is an enabler for the stuff above it. The electricity is an enabler for the hardware, which is an enabler for the virtualization, which is an enabler for the app. All of those layers together, put an icon on a desktop. I remember the last project I did at Citrix, we were trying to simplify the way the project was being thought of internally, and to stop thinking about that huge stack and try and actually work together. And we said, look, what you're delivering is an icon to a desktop. Behind that is irrelevant to the end user. You shouldn't expose them to any of that as well. And moving along from that traditional 3-tiered architecture to something more consolidated and easier to manage means that you get to that application quicker as a project and also as an administrator. You spend less time behind that icon and more actually in the broker or within the desktop layer or the application layer, which is really where we want to be. So let's click on diagrams and start to make a bit more sense. So what we've done here, we've actually taken one node out of each one of these blocks, a block being a 2U appliance. In this example, there's 4 individual nodes in a 2U chassis. So what we've done here is actually to bring each 3 of these nodes together to form a really simple starting cluster. But if I click on any of the hardware, I can start to look at the individual stats, some of the metadata as well, in case we wanted to see what was going on, the size of the disks and what processes and whatnot. But we're getting statistical information back, we're getting data. Anybody remember EdgeSight? Proper EdgeSight as it was when they were required. So I used to look after EdgeSight forever. Loads of data, nobody can argue with that. Very little information, like Excel help. It's only good if you know how to use it in the first place. What this does is to make life easier. So you're a consumer of the information as an admin or help desk or whatever else it would be. And if I want to look at individual components, I can click on one of the SSDs, performance, and we can see what an individual disk is doing as well. And as we go higher up the stack, all of this information is retained. But we can go into looking at individual NICs as well, see what they're doing. And you can start to correlate things together in terms of what's running right, what's running wrong, or where the problem isn't. This is what I used to use EdgeSight for. Make sure you can find where the problem isn't, and then, Sherlock Holmes deduction, that's where you should be looking. Really simple things as well that we built into the product. Turning on an LED for a disk, right? If the disk fails, and how many people, I'll rephrase this, how many people have heard a story of somebody who's pulled the wrong disk when it's broken? Fairly common, right? So we have that line of sight from our control of VM, our software, into the hardware, regardless of what the platform is, whether it's Lenovo or a Dell OEM or our own system. We can just turn the LED on and say, right, well, don't pull anything else that isn't glowing. Simple little things like that. Really simple. There's an illustration of how the write path works, and we're not going to get into any of the deep technical stuff about how the system hangs together architecturally. What we can do is, if we sort this by disk and look over at Get for the internet,
It's 4G. It's still there.
Could be my VPN now. What I'm going to show you here is gather all the disks together, and if you look at it by usage, the SSDs are the ones that are showing up first. And the reason for that is, if I'm a host, and I write a block of data, or I'm a VM I should say, and I write a block of data, that goes to my SSD first. Mine, one that's local to me. Okay. At the same time, to replicate it somewhere else in the cluster 2 or 3 times, depending on what you want to do. But only when they get to about 75% will it start to drip data down into the cold tier. But very soon, we're just going to be shipping on all flash anyway. We already have an all flash model. But any of the models we have in any of the sizes, we'll be able to deliver all flash in those as well. So spindles will be there if you want capacity, right? It's cheaper to do that in some cases. But I think Bilberry spinning disks will be dead in 18, 24 months anyway. I know Cisco are already testing the 3.8 terabyte SSDs, which is just mind-boggling. Crazy. So again, we can click on any of these, and it's just another way of viewing the data and looking and consuming that, okay? And if you've got some switches, I think Mellanox, Arista at the moment, we can look at the switch, use their API, and bring all that information back into the console as well. So if you think that your top of rack 10 gig switch is a bottleneck, or there's an issue with it, we can alert all that stuff as well. Alright, so let's go to storage. Anybody care about storage? I don't, truly. It's a commodity item, it's an enabler for everything else above it again. So you can see that we're up to 82,000 IOPS now. I don't know if that's good. It's like having a 200 mile an hour car to go to the shops and back. It's very rare that I would be able to do that on my high street at home. But it's nice to know it's there. That's the excuse I use to my partner when I buy fast cars for home. So let me just show you a really quick example. To create storage, let's say from most people are VMware, right? Yeah. So basically a container to VMware is a data store, it's a Hyper-V, it's an SMB3 share, to Acropolis, it's an iSCSI connection to the disks that we create, okay? So this is how you would create storage, any size. That could have been 10 petabytes. It could have been a cluster of 100 servers or 1,000 nodes or whatever. It doesn't matter. All we're doing there is really saying, this is it, this is actually a container, because it's going to contain your virtual machines. So if we go and have a look at that, the only reason why you'd ever need to go back to this, because you could just start creating VMs now, which I'll show you as we go one level higher. The only reason why you'd want to go into this is to add policies to it. So do you want to turn on erasure coding? Do you want to reserve some space for whatever reason? Do you want to turn on performance, inline compression, EG, all this kind of stuff? Whitelist it. If you're going to, you want to migrate VMs from an ESX cluster into Acropolis, just whitelist this, mount it on your hosts, clone the VMs, bring them in, we'll convert them, stand them straight up again. We did a 50 VM project, which was basically about 10% of the workloads this customer wanted to do. And we did all of that in an afternoon. The last thing they need to do is strip out the VMware tools and put our guest tools into it, and that's it. We do all of the disk conversion on the fly. To the point now, we could even have two clusters, one that's ESX and one that's Acropolis, and we can move VMs between them. Stand so let's say your Acropolis cluster is your test and dev, and your ESXi cluster is your production one. We can stage VMs in here, obviously without any sort of cost on the hypervisor, and then effectively promote them up to there, and then they can be your live production ones, where you are paying for, where you are getting the value. If you need the management layers and stuff like that around ESX, nice and simple. And there we go. That's storage. Didn't move here for a hard life, as I keep saying. I used to look after NetApp stuff when I was in IT at Citrix, so I know the pain. So let's go one higher. So let's go into VMs. So you've already seen me clone VMs and all that kind of stuff. This was the real thing that changed. This is the one thing that changed when you go to the Acropolis hypervisor rather than Hyper-V or ESX. If you're on those, you're using System Center, you're using Failover Cluster Manager, or you're using vCenter, sorry. That's where you do your administration above the infrastructure on those hypervisors. With KVM, you used to make sure you tie something very good around your wrists and try to do it all over the CLI. When we moved into the Acropolis hypervisor, when we released that, it was really the distributed control plane. So there's no single management server, node, VM, whatever you want to call it. Within this, it's a completely distributed system. So if we are all nodes in a cluster, any one of you could be the management node that I'm talking to. And if, no offense, if you left the room, left the cluster, fell over, were you drinking last night? Okay, so let's pretend it was last night, and you've been drinking way too much already, and you fall over out of the cluster. Can I still manage my entire environment? Yes. Do I lose any performance? No. Because you all know he's fell out of the cluster. You're all pointing at him going, that's a shame. But the disks and stuff that was on him, or the data that was on you, now is being re-replicated by all of you as this massively parallel task. And that's the benefit of having a truly clustered architecture. And we're the only ones to have that clustered architecture. I can tell you that right now. It's actually very beneficial. So let's say, for example, we wanted to do deduplication. We turned on post-process dedupe or something like that. I give each one of you a bag of Skittles. Everybody know what Skittles are? Coloured sweets. So I ask you all to find the blue Skittles. Do it fairly quickly, right? You've got a bag this size, dead easy. If I put them all into a bucket and I give them to you, you're going to take a lot longer to do that same task, right? That's a SAN, that's a clustered file system. That's a clustered architecture where we all participate. Much, much better. Anyway, sorry, I digress, as usual. So that's one VM doing 7,000, not a lot. So anyway, the management that we bring into this from the Acropolis point of view is now part of the virtual machines. So we can stand up VMs, we can call it easy4321, give it a description, map cores, don't do this, which is what I used to do. Because we used to do it in Meg, and I created a VM that was the size of the bloody universe. Do that. And then what we do is to start adding the disks to it. And it's the container where your disk goes. So, there we go. E2H, create it in there, create a 200 gig disk, add that. On the CD-ROM, if we wanted to map that. Pick any of the ISOs we've already uploaded, which is just sat in another container called ISOs. Simple as that. So we can start that up, update that, done. That's how easy it is to create a VM. So even in the space of, what, half an hour, we've gone from looking at everything globally, faffing around, but now we're just, in the last probably 2 minutes of work, we've created all the storage, looked at everything, created a VM, or at the point now, we're at that value layer. You're either building your broker, you're looking at your virtual desktops, you're provisioning your apps, all that kind of stuff. There's nothing hard here, right? That was the key thing when I saw this, is that I thought, well, it's a great idea, and it's easy to consume. And those two things are very, very hard to get together. It's very easy to make complex systems, as we all know, right? To a degree, we all work in a complex system now. It's very hard to make simplicity, at scale, and certainly something for enterprise customers as well. So if we go back to, if I go and look at storage again, I think I've got to show you. If I go to, so this VM container here, that's the container where I've created all of those clones for that iometer disk, or those iometer VMs. So we can look at it from the hardware, in terms of the host, the disks, the virtual machines, the container, and the entire cluster, and all of the clusters globally as well, all within the space of a few minutes. Nice and simple and straightforward. There you can see that one working away. When we do this VNC connection, by the way, we're actually tunneling that through one of the CVMs, so it's not exposed to the outside world. You can put an external client on. Put RDP on your VMs and do it the normal way, obviously afterwards as well. Any questions about any of that stuff? Can anybody get a high score on this game that we put into our enterprise product? Can anybody tell me the game we used to have in the console? Tetris. Can anybody tell me why we got it removed?
License? Copyright?
Yeah, basically a really snotty email from a Russian lawyer, which we paid a lot of attention to. So nice and simple, right? I mean, it's consumable, it's easy. There's obviously a load of stuff that you do within the VMs. Nothing's going to simplify that, apart from Res, AppSense, those guys. But this is the idea of this is it's a consumable infrastructure, and this is really just the first phase of the company to solve that problem of trying to simplify the hypervisor and all the infrastructure in itself. What we're doing next, and probably what's going to be announced, what is it, the 22nd, I think it is. That's when I fly to Vegas for our second annual user conference. And there's going to be some severely cool stuff announced there as well. I can't tell you about, but it should be quite nice. So, who's familiar with this?
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah, look at this. 21st century. Yeah, it's a massive improvement on what we all used to play around with, right? So, Simon Plant, God bless him, he did a good job. So, it's exactly the same. You pick your disk image, you pick your snapshot, you deploy VMs from it. If we want to add some machines, update the machines, so instead of creating a new one, I'll show you this with the interest of time. Go in here, pick the master image you want. You can see this is one we're using at Synergy as well, and then deploy it. Rollout strategy. How much do you hate your users? It's always that sort of stuff. Very, very simple and straightforward. So let's go and add some machines to this, just to tie things off. This is the first time I'm actually going to finish on time. I'm absolutely amazed. So let's go and create some more VMs. Next. You can tell I don't look after any of this, don't you? I just randomly create rubbish all over the place and walk away. Definitely used to be an SE, he says. The only caveat around this is you've got to be 7.9% desktop. Obviously with the provisioning SDK and the like as well. And this is just an MSI you download from our website, from the firmware and tools. If you're a Nutanix customer, so forget if you are, find it in there, install on the broker, you're done. The only other part, which is what we did before all of this, was the power management plugin as well. And that really comes somewhere. The power management stuff, which is obviously a host connection. And this is actually a really good illustration of how Citrix has grown even since I left. So I remember when this list was just the main three, right? Now, you can deploy shit anywhere, including to the Acropolis hypervisor, which is such a part that we put into it as well. So nice and simple and straightforward. If you go up here, there you go, that's actually already done, that's just cleaning up now. So if I go back to my top-down view, and I go and just have a look at GG, there you go, there's all the VMs I just created. And clearly my naming scheme is completely off Active Directory, I'll skip over that. And if I want to, click on one of these, I'll power it on from here. We'll launch the console. Done. Piece of piss, isn't it? It really is. It's not the be-all and end-all, it's not like feature parity on ESX or Hyper-V or whatever. But that's not what we're doing. We're not aiming to be a feature parity, because that's what Citrix tried to do when they acquired Zensource, is go straight for VMware like that. In my opinion, as an ex-employee and sort of external now, what Citrix is doing with ZenServer is absolutely right. Make that your tier one for your stuff. Right? In the same way, kind of we're doing that for Acropolis as well. So I think taking that approach of give the customers everything they need, not shelfware that they're not going to use, and then build as those requirements come in. I think that's a really good way, because it makes engineering life a lot easier, and it makes talking about the product easier because you actually get to grow that in a little evolution as well. I'll show you one other thing, which is a terribly misspelled, badly crafted website.
Is it yours?
Oddly enough, it is. So I went back through all of the release notes, because I was very bored. And I wanted to see, well, what have we introduced in software, just software, over the last whatever year. So I went back as far as I could care to. Because I've got a customer where I was actually at last week with a new SE starting. We went to a customer who had what was this, they bought it in 2013, it was about April they bought. And they were on an older version of the software. When they started, on the same bit of tin now is running the latest and greatest. So they're on a sort of a mixture of a cluster of Ivy Bridge and way back onto the old Sandy Bridge platforms as well. But everything here, so we're going back, can you read that okay? Mm-hmm. So everything here, this goes back to January 2013, so slightly before they had. So you see, we used to do Fusion IO cards back in the day. That's such an evolutionary leap now, right? It's all SSDs now. So everything here, so that's January 2014. Everything here is a non-disruptive rolling software upgrade to anybody's platform that we sold to. And it goes on, and you go, Mitsubishi Evolutions, if anybody's wondered. And it just goes on. Goes on and on and on. And all of that is software updates. And if you do want to actually update any bits of software, let's go into this one. All of it is non-disruptive. So we can upgrade our Acropolis platform, basically the controller VM, the hypervisor, there's a new update for that out. Firmware of the disks, the BIOS, BMC, our own cluster health checking tool, or Foundation, which is actually the tool we use to image the nodes in the cluster as the hypervisor you choose. We ship with Acropolis, and then you tell it what you want to put on there. So if you want to swap the whole thing to ESX, you do that straight away. And we'll deal with all of that for you. And all of this can be done live, which is what those guys did at winter testing. They had 2 clusters up and running throughout the season, one at factory, one at track, globally. They didn't actually touch it for an entire year. And aside from powering it on and powering it off, they never went near their infrastructure. They looked at the VMs above it, which is where the value was. The one time they did do the testing, they did it live while they were lapping Silverstone, because they wanted to see, well, was he talking bullshit, basically. And obviously, I'm pleased to report they're still doing pretty well. Any questions that take 9 seconds? That's the first time I've actually finished on time, isn't it?
Well done.
And the mics work through all of it. It's amazing.